So today let's talk about stars and other night sky objects and star trails. These are all the starting points of most night sky photography. Now, dragging down like this shows the ephemeris page chooser. The stars and star trails page is the first option under night photography. So let's tap it like this to select it, and now let's take a look at what's on this page. Now the first item on the first row shows Polaris. Now you can see that it has a blue color, which means that it can be clicked. Let's tap on it like this to see what we get. And as you can see here, you can select a star from this list of the brightest stars. You can also filter out the 8 planets by tapping here. You also have the 88 constellations along with their elevation angles and azimuths. And the last category shows nebula. Not every single one, but most of the Messier nebula are listed here. For example, M42 is the Great Orion Nebula. And you can see them on the map overlay or in the viewfinder. So let's start by selecting a constellation, and you'll see how easy it is. All right, now for example, let's choose Orion. After you select Orion, you can now see it on the map. How crazy is that? Look at this. Right here, you can just see the outline of Orion. I love that. And when you adjust the time slider, you can see how Orion moves as the night sky progresses. And that's how you can tell the direction of the constellation or the selected star or the nebula or the planet. I just think this is amazing. So check that out. And we're going to go ahead right now and we're going to switch back to Polaris like this. Now the reason we select Polaris by default is that Polaris is often so important for circular star trails. We often want to include Polaris in the viewfinder when taking star trails images, since the star trails will form in concentric circles with Polaris as the very center. Now the second value that you see right here is the elevation angle of Polaris, which of course is going to be very close to your location's latitude. Now the third value is the azimuth, which is usually right around 0 or 360 degrees for Polaris. The fourth item is a toggle button. You can tap it to toggle between Star Trails mode and non-Star Trails mode, and you'll see how to use this one later on. Now on the second row, we have the starting time and the ending time. They default to the dark night starting time and the dark night ending time, respectively. As a matter of fact, these two times are the same as the two night times under the special hours page. Now, this is the starting time of the dark night, right here. This is the ending time of the dark night for the previous day. And the duration here is the night duration, counting from the starting time to the ending time. This value is the star trail swiping angle, basically the star's angular movement across the sky. Now, all of these values can be adjusted. Let's say I want to start taking star trails from, let's say, 8 p.m. We can tap on it to edit it like this. And we can change the value to 8 p.m. like this. And now you see the text of the starting time is bold, meaning that this is no longer the default starting time, but a time that you set intentionally. Same thing with the ending time. For example, let's say we want to end at 11 p.m. Okay, so now you can see here the total duration will now be 3 hours, and the angular movement of the stars will be 45 degrees. Now you can also simulate your star trail image in the viewfinder. Just set the focal length tool first like this. Point to Polaris. And then switch to the VR. I just love this. So take a look at what I do so you can follow along. First, long press on the starting time like this. And that sets the current time to the starting time. So now we only see Polaris, but we don't see any star trails just yet. And that's because we're just starting to take the images so that we don't have any star trails that have developed yet. But now look at this. As time goes by, I can adjust the slider. You can now begin to see how the star trails develop. And in fact, if I long press on the ending time and set it as the current time like this, it means that we've already taken star trails for some period of time. Okay, so to see all of this more clearly, let's change to a wider angle lens like this. So here are the simulated star trails as if you took 3 hours of star trails from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Each trail represents an actual star. So that's pretty much it for the Star Trails feature. It's super easy to use, as you can see. Now the next feature we want to look at is the non-star trail feature, or the spot star feature. And to start, tap this toggle button right here. Now the main feature in this mode is the famous 500 rule. Now pretty much all night sky photographers know about this rule or have heard about it. And basically what it means is that if you want to take a starry night sky photo without seeing any star movement, the maximum shutter speed should be no more than the number 500 divided by the lens focal length in millimeters. It's basically the opposite of star trails. So in order to avoid the star trails, you need to keep the shutter speed as small as possible, but if it's too short, there won't be enough exposure, and that's how the 500 rule becomes useful. So for example, let's look at 14 millimeters. Using the 500 rule, the maximum shutter speed would be 36 seconds. For a 24 millimeter lens, the shutter speed is 21 seconds. It's pretty easy to calculate, sometimes even in your brain. 500 divided by 24 is just a little over 20 or 21. Okay, but if you have a faster lens, say a minimum aperture of f1.2 or f1.4, f1.8, we suggest that you use the circle of confusion rule, or the COC rule, or even the NPF rule. Using the COC rule, for example, for a 24 millimeter lens, the shutter speed is now 15 seconds, which is shorter than 21 seconds for the 500 rule. And if we change to a 14 millimeter lens, the shutter speed is 21 seconds, which again is shorter than 30 seconds that we had before. And in fact, in our next video, you're going to learn a lot more about the NPF rule and the COC rule in detail, and you're going to and when to use which one. Now, as you can see here, there's also a 600 rule, which is much less, well, it's significantly less strict than the 500 rule. But you only really want to use this when you have a really slow lens, for example, f4. And then even though you'll notice star trails from this rule, it's better than not getting enough exposure. Well, that's it for the introduction to stars and star trails. There's 2 more videos for this topic that describe these latter topics in much greater detail. Please be sure to check them out as well. So until next time, this is Mike Shaw with Planit for Photographers saying best of luck planning your star trails with Planit.